Hi, and welcome to another edition of Danny Brown Talks Phoenix. I am your host, Danny Brown. And joined with me today is Art Shalomov. How you doing, Art?
Doing great.
Yeah,
Thanks
did
for
I
having
pronounce
me.
that right?
That is correct.
All right. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? We'd love to get to know you a little bit better and kind of what it is you do.
Ultimately, at the moment, I run a mortgage company,
Okay.
and I started the mortgage company. I started working in the mortgage business when I was 20. I was still in college.
And how old are you now?
I'm 38,
Wow.
so it's been a while. But I kind of always had the itch, about real estate, and kind of, was always curious about it, and kind of followed along what's going on with the market. Little by little, got into real estate investing.
Yeah.
And I get to deal a lot with people. I get to see their finances. And one of the things that I've noticed was that, real estate was the foundation, or really the common denominator for all the wealthy people that I've dealt with. And I just wanted to learn more about it. Currently, I heavily invest in real estate. I enjoy it, and it's just kind of like one of those things that I always involved in. I hear real estate, my ears perk up, and it's just like one of those things that you get excited about, So
you mentioned a couple things. You said all the wealthy people that you dealt with had some form of real estate investing in their portfolio, and then you're investing in real estate yourself. So there's a lot of different ways to invest in real estate. What are some of the primary ways that you see, the wealthiest people invest in real estate, and how are you investing in real estate yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's one of those things that I guess there's different ways. You're right. There's a lot of different ways to invest. And one of those things that people always ask is, how should I invest in real estate, right? And one of the things that I've noticed is not a lot of people are clear about how, what they want to do. You hear, I'm sure, also as a realtor, is like, hey, I want to get into real estate, right? But how is it? So one of the things that I always, recommend or advise, hey, if you want to get into real estate, just be clear about what you want, right? So whether you could do many different ways. I don't look at flipping as real estate investing. I think it's really a job,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really important what you do with the money, right? So you flip, make the money, and then you buy a long-term investment. Flip, buy a long-term investment.
So you're using like short-term gains to build a little bit of wealth, and then
Equity.
invest in a property to hold.
Correct. And I think it's a great way. And something that's inspired me personally is just like, I meet a lot of people, and I'll never forget a story where I met, this was a couple of years ago. The guy was 64 years old, and, I do my initial consultation with a buyer on the lending side. And it's like, hey, are you a first-time home buyer? He says, yes. I'm like, have you ever tried purchasing one before? And he says, no. I'm like, well, how come? He goes, well, I always chased the lower rents, and I've never really realized how quickly my life is going to go by. And now I'm 64 years old, and I have nothing. So, and I've got 4 kids. I want to be able to leave them something.
So he was 64, and he had never
64.
owned a property before?
Never owned a house before, right?
Wow.
So that resonated with me, and I'm like, there's so many people out there like that don't really, they don't really have a retirement plan, right? And I read a statistic the other day that 83% of somebody's retirement comes from the equity in the property that they have. The other 17% comes from the 401k. But, it's just so interesting that when you look at people's finances, most people don't have anything lined up for retirement.
No,
right?
Americans are really bad at saving. And that's, one of the drums I've been beating for a long time, is that the best way to save money, if you're not good at it, is to buy your home, because then you're forced to make that payment. And if you don't look at it as a payment towards a debt, you're investing, say your mortgage is $1,500, $2,000, whatever per month. Instead of looking at it as paying down a debt, as depositing that money every single month into an interest-bearing investment,
Right.
that when you go to sell it, you're going to get that money back plus the appreciation in the property, and then you leverage that into the next house, and then into the next house.
Correct.
And then eventually you get, to your big McMansion, and then you go to sell that, and hopefully you've built up a little bit of, a nest egg in that equity, buy a much smaller property, and then now you've got something to live off of.
Exactly. So then you could leverage the property, whether to get a reverse mortgage or sell it, or it gives you at least some type of an equity position, right? Versus not having anything.
So if you were giving advice to someone that says, okay, that's great, but I don't have any money to get started. So how can I invest in real estate if I don't have anything?
So you do, there's so many books out there, right? It says,
Sure.
hey, buy with zero money down, and it is possible.
Americans don't want to save and they don't want to read. So
right. Well,
give me the hack, Art.
So so the quickest way to make money in real estate is really wholesaling, right? If that's the way, there's no other way for you to get income, you could either wholesale.
And what does wholesaling mean?
So wholesaling means you type a property, find a property that needs to be sold, right? You find a seller that's motivated, right? And then let's say if you don't have any money to sell it, what you do is you sell the contract to another investor, and what that does is basically you sell it for a fee, right? And it gives you a quick, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. It gives you, so that way you could build an equity position.
Mm-hmm. So you're essentially brokering a deal between a super motivated seller and another investor who has the money, to buy and hold or to flip it.
Correct. Or another way is how I've done it also. I've partnered up with other investors, and I said, okay, I'll do all the legwork, or I've done it twice. I done 2 different ways, whether I provide the money or the funding, or sometimes I'll do all the legwork. You find, the deal, and it works out. So you've got to bring something to the table, one way or another, so that at least you can build that equity position. But you do need the money, right? Mm-hmm. Ultimately, what you want to do is buy the first house, right? And that will help you with everything else. Because ultimately, if it's just like on the lending side, when we see you've got to have some type of security, right? Because it all comes with territory.
So what are some different real estate paths that you can invest in to help kind of grow your wealth?
So one of those things, I like single family real estate investing for a couple of reasons. Number one is it's safe. You don't have such a big turnover, right, of families versus having a fourplex or a duplex or multifamily. It's a quicker way to build equity, right, because they're easier to sell. Mm-hmm. So I would highly recommend for someone that's getting started buying a single family residence, whether it's, you buy it and live in it for, 2 years and sell it for an equity position, or if it's an investment property, I would definitely start out with a single family. It's just a much safer way for someone that has never really done real estate. Now, if you're more advanced, yes, look at, fourplexes and other ways.
What about townhomes and condos?
So interesting. I don't mind townhomes so much as much as the condos. Mm-hmm. Condos are a little more restrictive, and usually they come with skeletons in the closet, right? And the reason why is because the HOA has a very strong control over what's going on with the complex. For example, like you can buy a condo, and then while let's say you bought it and it was financeable, one investor could go buy out most of the units without you having any control in it, and then all of a sudden the property becomes non-financeable. Mm-hmm. So what it does is it reduces the marketability of the property of a project, right? And then you're stuck. And then what happens? You're only looking for a cash buyer, which limits the amount of people that are actually looking to buy it, right? And then reduces the value of the property.
So one of the things that I've argued and try to explain to people when they're looking to do investments is you kind of want to buy run-of-the-mill vanilla properties, which tend to be 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,800 square foot,
right,
single family home, priced somewhere probably around $280,000, $325,000.
Right.
That's kind of where you want to stick.
Yeah, and it's so much. It's harder now to get the bigger home, right, at 1,800 square foot. So, just to kind of expand on that a little bit, maybe not 1,800 square feet, but maybe you could go a little bit with a lesser square footage, but make sure it is a 3-bedroom, single family, right? And right now, I mean, the market's hot, right? So it's harder to get deals.
For sure.
So what you really are what you're buying is a price point. So price points are really important. That's something I focus on. So anything under $350,000, if I come across a deal, I just buy and hold it. I think it's a great safe way for you to build a portfolio, is really buying the price point. Now, something to think about is, and I've burned back in 2008, 2009. So I don't buy expensive real estate anymore, just because if the market does take a turn one day, right, affordable housing has become scarce. So everybody looks for the affordable home, right? So it's the price points that are really, really important in today's market.
Because you're trying to apply to the masses.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
So you want the home, whether you're going to buy and hold or flip it, for it to be attractive to the most amount of people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Correct.
So kind of sticking around those averages for the area that you're looking in.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it.
So what type of risks would you say are associated when you're trying to grow your wealth through real estate that people should be aware of?
Well, there's obviously there's always risk involved, right? One of those, I always look out, make sure you don't get sued by a tenant, right? So you want to make sure that you're covered there. The other thing is being prepared to be a landlord. You've heard stories. Hey, I don't want to be a landlord. I don't want to be fixing toilets in the middle of the night. And that really comes with not being prepared to be a landlord, not being educated, not having systems in place, or being desperate just to put anybody in there. So, the risk in that being, hey, you could get some headaches, from tenants that really shouldn't have been in the first place. So that comes with the territory. But I think a lot of it could be eliminated if you just do your homework up front and be prepared.
What are some things that people can do to prepare themselves? Does that mean like working with a good property management company, or do you argue that you should take it on yourself?
So, so the first thing you should do is really know the laws, right? That's the first thing you should do. Secondly, whenever you're putting a tenant in the property, you should always do a walkthrough yourself, or we'll have a property management do it. Make sure all the toilets are working properly, all the valves are working properly, all the electricals in place, service the AC unit. Because what happens is you just get somebody right after they moved out. You don't do the homework on you don't know what happened, and then stuff starts going bad, and that's just when when you get the call in the middle of the night.
I've argued with a lot of sellers. I go on a lot of listing appointments, and one of the questions, they're like, well, we're considering just turning this into a rental and leasing it out. And the one thing that I tell them is that being a landlord is not a walk in the park.
It's not.
It takes work. Owning real estate as an investment is not passive income. It's not like owning a dividend paying stock.
Right.
It takes legwork, and you need to do the homework. Otherwise, you're going to get yourself into trouble. And you do get those calls in the middle of the night. And if you don't have a quality property management company, you're the one that needs to go over there. And it's not small stuff. It's midnight and the AC is out.
Right.
And they want that stuff fixed
right
now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you better get up and you better go fix it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with that. And one should definitely really figure out what they want to do, whether they want to be a hands-on or get a property management company, and make sure, and I always tell people, make sure you get new friends, right? If you want to be in the real estate business, meaning get a good lender to help you with all your financing, get a good realtor to help you with, real estate advice, get a good CPA, property management company. And when you get bigger, you need a real estate attorney.
Yeah. You almost need like your staff. Like
right.
These are the integral parts of your team. I get phone calls a lot from out-of-state investors, people who, I've got $200,000 in cash. I hear Phoenix is a hot market. I think the only way that you can be a successful investor in anything is you got to take ownership.
Absolutely.
And you've got to do the research and know what you want. You can't just rely 100% on, those people to do everything for you.
Right. And I agree with you. I'm sure you get as a realtor, it's like, hey, find me a good deal, right?
Oh, I hate that. It's like,
And again, if you're going to be an investor, you've got to do your own homework,
Yeah.
right? So you've got to know the basics and really have some type of understanding of if you're going to be handling money or real estate, you really need to be involved. So knowing, understanding what the market is doing in a specific area, narrow down on the area that you want to do. And for example, I have a realtor that I work with closely that does all my real estate stuff. He sends me a property. I do my own homework. Ultimately, not that I don't trust him, but I'm involved in it.
Absolutely.
Because I take it very seriously. And same thing with with lending. You've got to make sure that you understand what the basic guidelines, what the bank is looking for, right? It just makes that process so much easier.
Absolutely.
I talked to a doctor yesterday. So he bought 2 properties out of state. He bought 2 properties cash. One was $300,000. The other one was $350,000. The other was $400,000. Now he's trying to do a cash out refinance. Makes things very difficult, and it's because he hasn't consulted the lender to position himself for the future, right? So those are the things that are really important, from working with the right people.
Yeah, because they're going to be able to put you in the right position from day one.
Right.
To be able to, so it's kind of mapping out, okay, we're going to work on the first property, but we need to be thinking about the second, third, and fourth, and how we're going to position you now in order to get there. And so I think you're absolutely right. Doing the homework yourself and having a bit of knowledge is only going to help you and make sure that there's also a lot of bad people out there, especially
Absolutely.
in our industries.
Oh, yeah.
They're just looking for a quick sale, and they're not going to give you the best advice. So making sure that you're putting in that legwork up front to just protect yourself and be an educated investor is going to make the process a lot smoother.
Right.
So when you're investing in property, do you focus on just a specific area to make things easier so that if some deal comes across your plate, like pretty quickly whether or not that's a good deal, or do you just kind of focus on the greater Phoenix area in general?
Well, I strongly believe that whatever you're doing, you've got to be the master of, right? So you can't really know Phoenix 100% of the, so
it's too big.
It's too big, right? So I I pick specific areas that I really study. And every night before I go to bed, I just kind of check out, see what's going on in the market, just to kind of see what the feed is and, if there's any properties popping up or what the investors are doing. And you can totally tell. So the newer investors that I talk to, I say, hey, I want to get into the mortgage business. I say, okay, the first thing you do is, pick the area. Usually it's the area where you live. People get, they know it much better, right?
Sure.
So start looking what's going on in the area. See if there's a property popped up, see who picked it up. If an investor picked it up, and they're like, well, how do I know which one it is? I'm like, well, you can tell a remodeled home because they all have plank tile, white kitchens, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
just follow what's going on, right? And yes, you can't. I believe that you've got to be a master of that area. So when a deal comes, you actually know it's a deal, and you always want to have an exit strategy. So when I come across a deal and I'm trying to buy it, I already have 2 exit strategies, what I'm going to do with the property, right? So am I going to rent it? Am I going to sell it? What am I doing with it? So it's important to know the area specifically. And then when you go into the property, just know what you're going to do with it.
Very good. What, how much, I guess, if you're looking to flip a property, one of the big things is finding the people to do the work.
Oh, yeah.
How does one, especially in this environment where contractors are spread really thin and going, if your job's not big enough, they just tell you to kick rocks. So how do you find that source of part of your team, finding a good contracting company that will help you and not take advantage of you in terms of how much you're spending? So
I struggle with it too. And the way I handle, I actually, and that's what I was saying earlier, make new friends. Mm-hmm. So some of the new friends you make are going to be real estate investors. And then you get to pick their brain and see who they use so you can actually get through the project. Because sometimes you can have a person that you're working with, right? But they may be occupied at another project and just say, hey, I can't take your job. You want to have backups. So, and you're absolutely right. In this hot market, it's definitely a challenge finding good work. And it is a struggle, but you do need a network of investors where you can actually help each other.
How does one find, are there clubs? Like, do you just go on meetup.com, or like, how do you find, I mean, it's a serious question, but
Yeah.
how do you find a network with other real estate investors?
So I follow biggerpockets.com,
Mhm.
which is a big portal for real estate investors. I really like it. I think they've got lots of great information, just lots of great people. If I ever need an accountant or have a question about anything, right?
And that was biggerpockets.com.
Biggerpockets.com. I
Okay.
really enjoyed it. I've read multiple books from their website. I think it's a really good tool. But yeah, that's a good network. And then if you tell everybody you're in real estate, you'd be surprised how many people tell you I'm in real estate too, and then it just starts a conversation.
For sure.
The other part would be, hey, talk to your realtor. I'm sure they know. Real estate agents are always known for being like the yellow pages, right, of real estate.
Yeah.
And they've got a lot of great contacts, so that's always a good referral.
That's one of the things that we pride ourselves in, is the depth of our network in terms of being able to connect people, whether it's in real estate or outside of real estate. So I think you're absolutely right. I wouldn't use Yellow Pages. I would call ourselves Google. You know, it's the 21st century.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how much time do you think that someone should spend on one particular property?
Like
if you're flipping it, like how much time should they spend prepping that property and turning it?
Well, it really depends on the size of the project, right? So if you're flipping it, it really it depends on the size of the project. So now the projects are actually bigger because there's a limitation of inventory. So investors tend to take on bigger projects, right? Just because that's what you have. It's harder to find deals that are paint and carpet, right? So you're finding deals that need more work. So I would say project 60 days or so, just to get it.
I mean, time is
3 months.
money in that industry.
Yeah,
if
you got to move quick. Yeah, it's definitely,
because one of the ways to finance is using what's called hard money,
right,
and that's through a non-traditional, mortgage lender. They tend to charge you a much higher interest rate.
Correct.
What's that, like 14%?
It's not so bad anymore. I think you get 10 to 12%.
10 to 12%.
Yeah.
And those are really geared towards short-term capital, so that you can get in, get out, pay that thing off as quickly as possible.
Right. And that's one of the other thing is you always want to make sure when you get into hard money, you always have an exit strategy. Just because sometimes there's things happen, right? You buy in a property that you don't know what's wrong with it, and sometimes a project that you think is going to take 30 days turns into 6 months. I mean, you're not making money at that point.
Yeah, you're losing money every month.
Right. So you always got to make sure you've got a strategy. So for me, when I go into a property, especially if it's a bigger project, I always want to make sure that I can refi out of it, go into conventional, just in case if I have to hold on to it.
How do you make sure that you can refi out of it?
I stay away from certain properties. So for example, if a property comes in that's been worked by another contractor and it's been halfway done, I just shy away from those.
Sure. There's a reason that they're not finishing it.
Yeah, and you just never know. And I've made mistakes like that. I just stay away from that. Properties that have funky additions, I stay away from that just because you just never know. But ultimately, if it's a home, just original condition, I'd rather get all original and something that I can just put financing on it if I had to,
So that's just putting like a traditional mortgage on it.
Yeah. So if I had to get out of it and just run it for a year, I can do that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're putting yourself in a position where you can get burnt, and hard money. I mean, those payments come quick.
Yeah.
And they're expensive.
I think the couple of the key points that you touched on that I really want to focus on is having an exit strategy and having multiple exit strategies. And then you also mentioned that, a project that you think could take 30 days could take 60. I oftentimes tell clients when working with contractors, whatever they tell you, multiply it by 2. So if they give you a timeline, it's going to take twice as long. And if they give you a dollar amount, it's probably going to cost you twice as much.
Yes. And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, right? Really understanding what you're doing, right? And learning about, it's not just relying on what the contractor is telling you, but really understanding what, The contractor could also be making a mistake, right? You could be a good guy, but he could be making a mistake. You just really want to know yourself, what's going on. It goes back to really knowing and understanding, being part of it versus just relying on everybody.
So when you're, kind of want to wrap this up, but a couple last questions. When you're investing in a property to buy and hold, are you focused on what your monthly return is primarily, or are you focused on, the word cap rate gets thrown around quite a bit. So what is your focus when you're investing in something to buy and hold?
So right now, just because of the way the market is, I focus more on price points, because those price points tend to
because they're going to appreciate
a lot faster. And my position right now, I'm looking I don't necessarily look for a return, a monthly cash flow. I'm looking to build equity position. So my strategy right now is not, because I'm going to be selling everything eventually, because once I build a little bit of equity, I want to be able to sell one property, so I take that equity and buy two with it. So my goal is to build a bigger equity position. So not looking for necessarily.
So you would be fine if it was going to potentially increase in value. You'd be fine with breaking even on a monthly basis, or even taking a small loss?
I'm not okay with the loss, but I would be okay with breaking even. But it's hard to. I always put money down on a property, so there's not going to be a loss 99% of the time.
Sure.
And the way I just do the math up front, I kind of prepare myself, and that's what helped me being in the mortgage business, because I can kind of look through it all and just see, okay, how do I want to position myself for this specific property? But I'm not okay with losing money every month, just because it's just, you may hold on to it for 2 years, right? 3 years. And I'm not okay with losing money for 3 years in a row.
Sure.
Right. And again, it just goes back to positioning yourself and what I want to do with the property. Just getting the financing in line to make sure it works out.
What's the ideal amount, do you think, to put down then on one of those vanilla price points? Is it 20%, 30%?
So minimum, of course, is 20%. Sometimes you come across a great deal. There's lots of equity. You can put 10% down, carry 6 months of carry it for 6 months hard money,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then just do a rate and term refinance. So you are in a property with 10%. It works. Not all the time. It works.
Yeah. But mostly people should be prepared to put 20% down.
Yeah. If you're in it for a long run, just put the 20%. And if you've got the money, there's lots of people today. There's lots of people making a lot of money, but a lot of them are not planning for retirement and not putting any money away for investments.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got the money, you're making the money. Put it towards the house.
Yeah.
Hold on to it. Whether you never want to sell it, just hold on to it for 30 years, or whether you want to build equity positions, sell it and buy two more. And there's different strategies you can do that. Yeah.
So if anyone has any questions or wants to get in contact with you, how should they reach out?
So they could look me up on Facebook, Arthur Shalomov. My email address, ashalomov@allwestern.com, and then on Instagram, at Art Shalomov.
I love it. We'll definitely put that in the show notes. So if anybody has any specific questions for you about investing in real estate, or wanting to, finance, which is, what your job is, or if they potentially have deals that they should float your way that you might want to buy, we'll make sure that they can reach out to you.
Oh, absolutely. I love doing it. I love helping people with their financing, get them on the right track. And I really enjoy it.
Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you, Art, for being with me today. I really appreciate the time. I learned some things about investing in real estate that I can hopefully apply to my life. And as all of you know, I am a realtor. So if you have any needs in the Phoenix marketplace, definitely let me know. We help both buyers and sellers and investors. And we'll set you up with Art here too.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.